Hi, I'm Tristan J. Tarwater, and I'm here interviewing Christina Steenz on behalf of VanCAF 2020. I want to say howdy.
Hey.
All right. In case you're not familiar with Steenz's work, Steenz is a cartoonist, a comics editor, an educator, a creator, a editor of tabletop role-playing games. Uh, she is a co-creator of Archival Quality, which is a graphic novel that you can find all over the place, which was a winner of the Dwayne McDuffie Award. She's in Elements Fire, which was a winner of an Eisner Award and an Ignatz. You launched and edited Rolled and Told, which is a role-playing game supplement for D&D 5th edition, which is super dope. And you are also a professor at Webster University School of Communications.
Right.
That's everything? You want to add anything?
I think that's everything.
Right.
I teach cartooning at Webster, so
I think that's super cool,
it's
honestly.
fun.
Do they call you
It's fun.
Professor Steenz?
They do not call me Professor Steenz. They just call me Steenz. I'm okay with that. The professor is a mouthful.
That's cool, though. I think that's awesome. All right. Well, yeah, so we're going to talk about your work. We're going to talk about you and like just everything. Not everything, because we do have a time limit, actually. But I was reading about your background in comics and stuff like that, and I saw that you mentioned that your first comics was like Archie's.
Oh
And
yeah.
me too. Like I remember those double digests
That's
and
right.
how
Oh my
great that
god.
was.
Those double
And
digests, or like the ones where they collected them and like separated it by like year, like 70s or 80s or
mm-hmm.
60s. Like, oh my god, so good.
Yeah, and I remember I read Little Archies too.
Oh,
Those were
those
also
are all so good. They were like super easy to get a hold of,
yes.
like the double digest you could get like anywhere. Like I'm pretty sure I got mine at like the hospital gift shop when I went to like my
Yeah.
grandmother's like
Mm-hmm.
doctor's appointments, and then like you can get the other ones at your like local library. So
Yeah. I used to get them like at the bodega, like they would just
yeah,
have those just right next to like chips and sodas
yeah,
and things like
yeah.
that. Um, but also first comics, definitely reading like the funny pages, like in the newspaper. Like you are now the
Yep.
writer of Heart in the City, which
Yeah,
is a newspaper comic. Like, would you tell us a little bit how did that all go down? Like,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
really cool. And like, what is it like to write an all ages comic with
Mm,
like a wide audience that is specifically about middle schoolers? Because they're in middle school
yeah.
now. They started off like in first
Mm-hmm.
grade,
Mm-hmm.
and now they've like aged up and they're in middle school.
Yeah.
So like, what's that like? That's a big question and a lot of
It
parts,
is,
but like,
but I
go.
got
All right.
it.
Yeah.
So I actually was, I got reached out to by Sheena Wolf, who is the editor over at Andrews McNeil. She edits Heart of the City as well as Nancy and a bunch of other strip comics. And
Okay.
she basically was like, "Hey, I have a question. Are you interested in like comic strips?" And I was like, yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I read them. What for? And
Yeah.
and then she was like, well, I want to find a new artist for Heart of the City because the original creator, Mark DeTulli, he wants to step down. Because he had been doing the comics for like 22 years,
Yeah.
so like let the dude retire.
Yeah.
But it's cool because so many times with comic strips and like the changing of hands, oftentimes you'll either get something like early Nancy, where they kind of try to mimic the style of the original
Yeah.
creator as it goes through. So it's not very common for strip comics to be passed along to an entirely new creator with an entirely different creative style and
Yeah.
story choices.
Mhm.
So when I first got it, I was like, okay, so like, what you want? Like, do you want me to
Yeah.
like, try and do it in his style? Do you want me to try and do it in my style? And I've never written strip comics specifically. I mean, I've done,
Yeah.
short comics. Like I can do like,
Mhm.
a couple panel comics for like quick jokes on Twitter, or like
Yeah.
I teach one panel from 2, 3, and 4 panel comics in my cartooning course. So it's like I can do it, but I never had to do it professionally.
Yeah.
So,
Also, 4 panel, but like ongoing is different from like a quick gag one and done.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. I mean, they were definitely looking for someone who could take a 4-panel comic, give or take. Some of them can be, 2 or 3, depending on the story,
right.
and have an overarching story across all of them. So actually, when I auditioned for it, they were like, "We need you to do 2 weeks worth of roughs." And roughs are basically thumbnails. And thumbnails to me are still pretty detailed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they were like, "Oh, you can be even rougher than that." And I was like, "What do you mean?"
Yeah, like the definition is rough. Like,
yeah.
come on.
Exactly. And apparently, like, some creators will just put in like a letter A for one character with their speech balloon, and then like it goes from that to finish. And I'm like, oh, so you're not testing to see if I can draw or to tell a story. You're testing to see if I can make a gag, write a gag from beginning to end. And, on the one hand, I was like, weird for me because, having tested into a lot of different things, it's really all about how do you draw? Does it look good? Can you tell a story visually? How do you lay things out on the page? All of that matters. But with strip comics, they're like, yeah, we know you can draw. We just need to know if you can write, So that was definitely kind of a bumpy start because I was like, I can't believe I don't have to fill these drawings out. But thankfully Sheena was like, yeah, this is good, but let's get a move on. So I did 2 weeks of comics where I took a storyline. Before even I did that, I was like, I need some time to get to know these characters, like I read strip comics, but I don't read them regularly,
Right.
So I went back and I read a couple years worth of Part of the City, which is a lot because it's a daily comic.
Yeah.
So I did like the past 3 years, and then I went back to some of the early ones, and then some near the middle, and I became kind of like a heart expert on some, besides people who have been reading it since the start, I got pretty good at knowing who the characters were. And Sheena was like, you don't really need to do all that. I was like, no, I do. Trust me when I say I need to know. But I think, she was saying that because they really want to take it in a different direction. We've been doing the same thing for 22 years, and now we want to take these characters and give it to a new audience. And that makes plenty of sense. That's what adaptation is. And I love adaptation. So I was like, well, this is just my fucking bread and butter,
Yeah.
So after I wrote a treatment, I was basically like, okay, I want to write who these characters are, what their motivations are, and a couple of arcs, story arcs that would work. Once I got through that, then they were like, yes, this is what we're looking for. Now do the roughs. And then I did about 4 rounds of roughs, which is 6 weeks of comics, which was brutal.
Yeah.
But they needed to make sure that I knew what I was doing, which I get it. You're not used to writing for strip comics. It's something that it isn't something that people just automatically get, so it took me a couple months, well, not really, maybe 2 months 2 months to really
that's a couple, literally.
Yeah to really get into the groove of writing for strip comics. So that's how she reached out to me. And I found the difference between writing for strip comics and writing for graphic novels is that it's way more of a puzzle. You have the grand idea of what you want, which is the same for strips and graphic novels. But the difference becomes when you have to figure out how you want to lay it out. Well, the graphic novel, it's like, okay, well, let's separate it by arcs, and then we'll separate it by chapter, and then we'll go into it page by page. With strips, it's like, okay, you have your arc, and then you have to separate it by days because it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Those are the dailies. And you have to also think about how much story can I get into 4 panels.
Right.
And then you have to think about Sundays. Now, not all newspapers get Sunday comics, and sometimes newspapers only get Sunday comics.
Right.
So the Sunday comic has to fit in with the story, but not in a way where if you haven't been reading the dailies, you're not confused.
Right.
And so
that's right.
Yeah.
I remember that.
So they're like different, but they can also follow the same theme if you want. And then with Sundays, it's also broken into panels. So you have a title art panel, and then you have the panel with the actual meat of the comic. Now, the title art panel, you can use that to put just that title art, or you can use it to add an extra gag to the story.
Yeah.
And you have to realize that some newspapers don't get that title art. So if you do want to put an extra gag in there, it cannot match, or it cannot like be without the main meat of the comic. So it's very much about like, how do I take this one story and break it up into this many days, including Sundays, and have it all make sense. And it has to be funny.
Yes. Yo, that's yeah, that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's a lot. It's a lot more of a thinking process, and it's definitely about, writing, but you're doing less of waxing poetic and using your skills to make, flowery descriptions of things, and doing more to be like, how can I get this joke and this story across in 4 panels with limited space? Because you don't want to fill up the space with balloons, and you also don't want the text to be too small, because remember, these are getting printed at 2 inches by 6 inches. So you have to be able to read it legibly. And then you also have to figure out, you have to have enough space in between the gutters for the copyright, the website. And then you have to sign it and date it. So all of this stuff has to go on into every single panel, while with graphic novels, it's way more of a like, just get the story out from beginning to end,
Yeah. And that can happen, like you can write the middle first and then go back to the beginning in any order.
Exactly.
You put your name nowhere. And like you can do full page spreads. So like, oh my gosh. Is there anything from doing Heart in the City that you like think you'll bring into working on graphic novels or longer strips or your personal stuff?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say brevity for one. I find that whenever I do a script, I put a lot more in there than I need to, because I'm thinking from the standpoint of either A, what if someone needs to draw what I write, or B, what if I come back to this 2 weeks later and I don't know what my directions were, So I always put in almost too much into my scripts, and then I go back and I hack it down. So I think learning about these strip comics is going to help me so that it starts off relatively succinct, so that the editing process isn't going to take as long,
Okay, that makes sense.
But also I think I'm just going to get better at drawing, because seriously, I'm drawing like every day.
Yeah, totally. I was going to ask, because Heart is a big drama nerd. Did you do drama in middle school or high school? Did you get to bring any of that?
In high school, yes. So I was a techie in high school.
Nice.
And I also did some musical theater in middle school. And my mom is a huge musical theater fan, like to the point where we would like watch the Tonys as if we were watching the Oscars, even though we never went to see plays because we were poor. Like,
oh gosh. Yeah.
But like we know those soundtracks,
Totally.
So yeah, I definitely have like theater in my background, but I think what I'm going to be bringing to it is definitely the toughness between techies and actors, which if you're in theater, there's like
there is
battle.
Exactly. There's a little bit of bad blood there,
Yeah,
like,
sure.
Oh, you want me to like you? Well, how about that?
Yeah, so I have like a skewed perspective of the actors, but on the other hand, I've acted and sung myself when I was younger, so I think I have a pretty good background. I think the only thing that I don't have like the biggest background on is the city of Philadelphia. Like, she's from Philly, but I'm from St. Louis and Detroit. And like, I've been to Philly once to meet, Ivy, my creative partner. And, I like it.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
I like Rocky. I like Gritty. You know, like what do you want me to say?
Yeah.
So I think what I'm gonna do is, you know, even though it does take place in the city of Philadelphia, I'm gonna do the best I can to represent the city, but I'm also gonna focus more on, you know, her life in school, because that is one of the things that, you know, my editor wanted me to really focus on, is to do things away from, you know, what's going on with the adults and their lives, and more
Yeah.
so what's going on with Hart and her friends and her relationships. And I think that is indicative of just like what happens in strip comics. Sometimes you'll just get a strip comic about this little kid, and it's basically just of the voice of an adult talking about the like silly idiosyncrasies and foibles of their children, you know,
Yeah.
which is like cool. But
Yeah.
you know, if you're moving on to middle school, you can't really rely on that kind of humor anymore. You know, you can't be like, Hart can't be confused as to like what a 16-wheeler is anymore, because she's a middle schooler. You know, she
Yeah.
knows what this is. So the humor just has to change because she's gotten older. And I think that is where I'm coming in, because a lot of my interests are shows and, you know, movies that focus on middle schooler and younger aged kids. So like,
Yeah.
I know Hey Arnold like the back of my hand,
Yeah.
like
That's good.
Recess or The Weekenders. I mean, like, if it's a show about middle schoolers that took
Yeah.
place in like the 90s and early 2000s, I watched it, you know?
Yes, totally.
And then also, you know, I have a younger sister who's 8 years younger than me. So I remember what it was like when she was in middle school. So, you know, I have a lot to pull from. And I think that's kind of the direction that I'm going to go with it, you know?
Yeah. Do you think Hart is like a Gen Z kid, or like more of a like millennial, but now like
You
millennial
know,
in a Gen Z body?
I'm trying to make her more Gen Z than millennial in a Gen Z body, just because I don't want to cross that line of like,
Yeah.
oh, she's just the voice of Steenz, you know?
Yeah.
But I think one of the ways that I'm doing that is I notice that a lot of kids who are a part of the Gen Z generation are just more tuned in, you
They
know?
are. It's true.
They already have phones. You know, I didn't get my first phone until I was in high school, and I had to pay for it myself, you know? And then like they're way more tuned in with like activism. There's a character, Kat, and I'm, you know, having her be a part of like this activist group for like a really good reason. I'm like, when I was in middle school, my mother would not let me out of the house to go protest, you know?
Yeah.
But like nowadays, it's like your parents take you to protest, you know? That's something that's a part of their civic duty now. So, you know, I want to make sure that I get that in there and try and get as much Gen Z in there without sounding pandering, because that can be, you know, I don't want that.
they totally notice. Like I have a kid who's in Gen
Yeah.
Z. She's 13, and so I
Yeah.
was reading it like with interest, and I was curious, especially because like my kid loves. So I'm like millennial, Gen X cusp, and my kid's in Gen Z, and my husband's like more, he's more Gen X. Or I'm millennial Gen X, and so sometimes like she'll show me memes that like I get, and then there's ones that she shows me that are like so surreal and out there that I am like, you're cackling, and I don't know why this is that funny to you, but it is. And there's like this really like interesting surreal like nature to the kind of humor and memes that they do. And now we have Animal Crossing.
Oh my god, I know, it's wild, and I'm like really trying to stay as tuned in as possible, and I feel like I am pretty tuned in, you know? I'm like hashtag extremely online, you know? So like I get a pretty good idea of what's happening. Like I use TikTok, you know, like I can see where the humor is coming from and where it's going, you know? So I'm hoping that I can like, you know, grab it and bottle it up. But you should have your kid read Heart of the City, and you tell me if it rings true.
I sent her the link. I'm gonna have to like sneak it to her some other way because I'm her mom, and she's like, what? Like, no, just send me like a new record on Animal Crossing and leave me alone. I have homework.
It's like, if this isn't a KK hit, I don't need it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's what I do. Like every day, sends her a new record. She's like,
Oh
thanks,
my
Mom.
God. Ridiculous.
It's so funny. That is, yeah. You had mentioned before that Heart of the City takes place in Philadelphia, and like you're not familiar with it, like, but like you live in the Midwest, you know,
Yeah.
St. Louis, Detroit, or St. Louis. My bad, I'm not gonna be that dork. So like, when we talk about comics and we do shows, it's always like, you know, New York, California. I'm in Portland.
Yeah.
So like, it's always about these coasts, but the Midwest is like obviously mad big.
Yeah.
There's shows that happen there, and there's also like their own history and their quality. We saw a little bit of that in like Watchmen, the new Watchmen on HBO, where they talked about like the Midwest and the history there. So, and that's important. Like so many things went down, but there's people who are living there now, and they're making their living, they're making their comics, they're telling their stories. Like, tell me, like, what is, you don't have to speak for the whole Midwest right now, but I want to hear, like, the Midwest, like, what about that, like, your upbringing, like, do you bring to comics? Like, what are you seeing, and, like, what is, like, what can y'all learn, what can other people learn from y'all, and, like, why should people not sleep on the Midwest? Like,
yeah. Well, as a Midwesterner, I am pro corn, so you know, props to corn. It's like, it's so ridiculous. You know, people are like, "Oh my gosh, Missouri, is it just like a bunch of like cornfields?" And I'm like, "No, but yes,
it is. Like, it is."
Like, I live in the city of St. Louis. Like, we
Yeah.
have civilization. There's a GameStop here. You know.
I know, because you talked about it. I see you on Twitter being like, I gotta go to the GameStop.
Yeah, I know. I'm a mess. I'm always there. But,
you got
but
good
like,
stuff now.
I know.
It's not just games. They have the Jigglypuff hat.
I know. But yeah, you know, like I think about like how when I went to like science camp, to get into this science camp, I had to write an essay about like the good qualities of the research of corn.
Oh, what?
So it's like, that's probably not what most people have to do to get into science camp.
That's true. I mean, on the other hand, too, like people forget, like agriculture and science go hands in hand.
Yeah, they really,
like,
really do.
People
you know?
do push things. People get work, like in tech and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, it makes sense, and like that's the reference point. But still, like cornbread, like
look. But also, like, I don't know. I think about what it's like, you know, being in the Midwest and not really knowing like what you want to do with your life, because you know, if you're interested in the entertainment field, which we are, you know, sorry, but like books and comics were entertainment as well.
Yep.
The only thing you think of is the coast. But I think we're living in a world right now where thankfully the world is a lot smaller due to technology, you know, like we're having a conversation right now, hundreds of miles away from each other, you know, and then when people finally see this, it's for something in Canada. So, you know, like this is just like, you know, this is just normal now, you know? So I think, I don't know where I'm really going with this, but basically I'm just saying that, like, you know, if you are in the Midwest, you know, the comics can still be, you know, a career for you. You just kind of have to know how. You know, so many people think that you have to get a job with a studio, or, you know, if you want to be into comics, you got to like work at DC. And it's like, I don't want to work at fucking DC. You know, like, what for? Who for?
Yeah.
Why? Not me. Like, I love DC. I've got a ridiculous amount of comics. You know, I can tell you a lot about that entire line. But I do not want to work for that company. You know, and you don't have to, you know? So I think what's nice about, you know, the Midwest is that we're not really the like hustler kind of people, you know. We're not constantly like, okay, what's my next gig, let's go, you know, like, oh, what are you doing, how can we work together, networking. It's definitely feels a little bit more like community. Like you go to like the Midwest cons here and it's like, it's not big and bustling, it's not go, it's like, oh, what are you working on, let's sit and talk about it for a little bit, you know. And that sort of thing is cool. And I think you can be successful and not have to think, I need to be on top, I need to be at the next big thing, you know? So maybe that's my Midwestern, sensibilities coming through, thinking that don't have to be, an aggressive go-getter. I mean, you have to be, you have to have the want and the need, to do better, but you don't have to be like on top of it 24/7 in order to succeed. There are other ways that you can get comics done.
Yeah. I mean, that's really interesting. Like here we talk about like comics community in Portland, and like, there's such a huge like number of people, but at the same time, everyone, like the big joke is like, oh, I only ever see you at shows in other cities. You know what I mean? Which is true. And so it winds up being that like cons are like nerd prom, basically. Like everyone shows up in their best to like drink and throw down and stuff.
That's true. But then like I think about like the comics, community here in St. Louis, and it's like Marie Anger, like I used to work with her at the comic shop. Or like Ray, Nadine, like we have matching tattoos, like, so like we're all like friends in a different way. Like, I mean, obviously now it's a little bit hard because we're all stuck inside, and, I'm kind of a homebody, and, when you're a cartoonist, you just kind of, you work. But, everybody kind of knows everybody in St. Louis, and that's just how it is. So it's like, even if, we see each other at a con, it's not like, oh my gosh, it's been so long because I just saw you at the grocery store,
Right. Yeah. No, people are so like, I mean, I make a Post-it with everybody's name on it when I go to a show, and I'm like, I gotta see this person because I don't know when I'm gonna see them again. And then you see each other and you're like vibrating. You know what I mean? Do you think I'm trying to think of how to work. Do you think maybe people in the Midwest, or maybe just St. Louis, have a better understanding of like tiers of acquaintanceship, where you have like friends, and then you have like colleagues, which is different, and then you have besties? Because sometimes I feel like in comics, everybody, like, people want to be each other's like best friends, so like, but really I just want you to get me work. And like, that's not how to, like, that's whack. Like, don't be doing that.
No, I think it's hard because like here in St. Louis, if I want somebody to do something with me or to work with me on a project, we'll do it, and then the project will be done, and we'll be cool about it. But like, if you're acting like the kind of person who's just like, hey, what can I do? Hey, how did you do this? Or, hey, can you help me get this gig? I don't see it. Like, I literally just like don't see it here. It's definitely more of like, I want to pick your brain, but I don't want to take up too much of your time, because we're all like, I'm so sorry for bothering you, for speaking to you right now. It's like, we just want to make sure that everybody is comfortable,
Right.
So, I don't know. I guess I never really thought about it, but like, I think about all the comics people that are here in St. Louis and the surrounding areas, and it's just like, I don't know, we're just like cool with each other, and if we end up working together on a project, sick. Yeah.
Well, I think we're getting close to the end of the time, so I'm going to end with a final question on the topic of like community. You're really good at building community. You're part of the Valkyries. You do shows. You like set up meetups at different shows, and now we're all like dealing with carajo virus over here. But comics is still going. People are still working. People still need to make connections. People still need friendship. So like, what are your recommendations as someone who's like a really good community builder? Like, what are your recommendations, and like how to do that, and also how to make sure that you have that energy to be able to do that?
If you have a friend group and you haven't seen them in a while, and you want to still stay connected, get a Discord, make a Discord for just your friends. Like, I have a Discord for my D&D group, and like, we haven't played it in a long time, but I still talk to them like pretty much every day. We have different channels for all sorts of things. And then I have a Discord for like the marginalized gender, people of color. I've got like one for editors. I've got one for all sorts of stuff. And it's like, these are the kind of communities that are happening right now, and it's on Discord. And if you're don't really understand how that works, ask somebody.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh my gosh.
it's not like a messaging app, it's like a forum app.
Yeah,
if
totally.
anything. And so I would say get on Discord. I would also say look around to see if people are doing different kinds of meetups. Like I go to this thing called Bad Drawing Club here in St. Louis, and it's run by a friend of mine. And now she's like, well, obviously, since we can't leave our houses, we can't really meet up, but we can do it online. So she set up Bad Drawing Club over Zoom. So like people can just hop in and just kind of like chat and talk while they draw, you know?
Nice.
So it can be hard because I know, you know, some people just aren't outgoing. They're not extroverts. They don't know how to start conversations. And that is totally normal.
Yeah.
Which is why I like stuff like Discord, because you can kind of be a quiet participant, you know? Like I'm in a Discord that focuses entirely on Animal Crossing. Well, I'm on 2 of them.
Yeah. No.
But like,
yeah.
But like, I'm not on it all day long because obviously we were just talking about this earlier. I'm too fucking busy to be on Discord all goddamn day.
Seriously.
But if I do get on and I see something cool and I want to talk about it, I can, and people aren't going to be like, oh, yeah, so you only want to come and talk when it has something to do with you. You know, that's not something that happens. You know, it's like, oh, hey, I'm so excited that you're like interacting and participating, because it's like a forum that we're just happy to see you, you know, even if it is digital, you know?
Yes.
So I think advice would just be find out what those digital communities are, or start one for yourself. I know some people feel like they don't want to like step on people's toes, but like I'm in a lot of drawing groups, and that is okay, you know? Like I'm not in a drawing group and feel like that I'm, you know, competing, because when it comes to community building, it is not a competition. It is a community, you know, and there are different subsects to community. There are different subcultures in your community, you know, like that, and that's okay, you know? So if you want to quote unquote network, do what Gabby Rivera does and build a community, you know? Building communities is like the way you're gonna get ahead, I think, whether it's getting ahead socially and being fulfilled socially, or getting ahead professionally and you know, having people that have your back and having the backs of other people as well. You know, it all starts with, you know, building your team, as Leslie Knope would say.
Yeah, no, totally. Nice. Awesome. Well, cool. So I think, we're hitting that time that they wanted us to hit.
Yes, we did it.
Like you said, you're very busy. You know what I mean? You gotta get back. Gotta check those turnip prices.
Look, actually, I do. I haven't checked them since noon. Thank you for reminding me.
You're welcome. When I saw that they change in the morning and the afternoon, I was like,
oh no.
Oh my God. Like writing in my planner, like check those turnips.
I know.
Okay.
So, but thank you for taking
so
your
much.
time.
Yeah, totally. I appreciate it. Thank you. And for troubleshooting the Zoom, I appreciate it. And
absolutely.
I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
See you later. All right.
Bye.
Talk later. Bye.